It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Back with Home Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew a version 1.0 deck list to the commanders in front of us in my quest to brew the magic. Well, you know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below, as well as I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff for me. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're going back and covering Kaalia again. During Mardu Week for Tarkir Droidstorm, I really wanted to cover Kaalia. I think it makes a ton of sense. She cares about dragons. She's probably one of the most well-known Mardu commanders. And I think anytime we get new Mardu support, people are going to naturally start looking at old Mardu commanders, right? But of course, Kaalia makes a ton of sense, right? We got new dragons, and she could put down dragons with her abilities. So why not go back and take a look? But I decided to do something a little bit different. Today, we're going to have two versions of Kaalia up. One's going to be our normal Millsy Brews budget. The second's going to be a little bit more of a no-budget version, just because specifically there are angels, demons, and dragons that are very expensive. And in order to play them, you're not just going to be able to do it in our regular budget. So what I tried to do is target a good cross-section for our budget, still having powerful options while kind of keeping the budget low. And then in the no-budget version, we're going to basically break the bank for the bigger pieces that we just can't fit into the budget here. But Kaalia is a 4-mana 2/2 human cleric with flying. It says whenever she attacks an opponent, we can put an angel, demon, or a dragon from our hand tapped and attacking that opponent. This is a very interesting ability because you have creatures that will allow you to cheat things in, and most of the time they'll do something like bounce them back to your hand at the end of the combat. Well, Kaalia doesn't do that. It actually leaves that creature out tapped and attacking. And of course, right next turn, it's going to untap and be out for you. The caveat, right, is that Kaalia has to attack, and it has to attack that opponent, which I think is interesting. And it's something we're going to try to use to our advantage in a lot of different ways. The first is protecting Kaalia so that Kaalia can't get removed, right? Our entire deck is relying on Kaalia swinging at people, so I feel like we need to make sure that Kaalia can stick around to swing at people. And the second is, the more value we can have on attacking, the better her ability becomes. You know, we have things that double up attack triggers. We have other things that make creatures better when they're attacking, and we can add those in to basically make sure that not only Kaalia survives her attack, but whatever comes in can give us big value as well. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit early, check out that link down below. But all right, there are a lot of options in these three tribes, and these are three really fun tribes to pair together. You know, at first glance, I was always wondering why it was these three, and then I had that you should have had a V8 moment when I realized that all three of these tribes are centered in one of the colors. Dragons are predominantly in red, angels are predominantly in white, and demons are predominantly in black. It makes a ton of sense. There you go, 3 colors, 3 tribes, right? So you're going to see that over the course of most of our options. Of course, you'll have the odd examples where there's 2 color, options, but most of the time you're going to see that in most of your options in each of these. So what are the pieces we're looking for? Who are the creatures we're looking for? Well, you have something like Aurelia that when you cheat it in with Kaalia for the first time, it won't give you an extra combat. But for everyone after that, or if we hard cast it ourselves, it's going to give you an extra combat each turn, being an extra cheat in. Balefire Dragon says whenever it hits a player, it deals damage equal to each creature they controls equal to that amount of damage. This is a really interesting ability because I think there's going to be scenarios where we get ourselves into games where we are playing against a lot of go wide decks, or maybe, token decks and things like that. And I think Balefire Dragon's a good option to just nuke those players in combat instead of needing to use a board wipe at times. Balefire just also is a nice threat as a 6/6. Blast Furnace Hellkite may be a big 9-mana 5/5, but it just gives all creatures attacking our opponents double strike. Now, this is worded interestingly because it actually will give our opponent's creatures double strike if they attack other one of our opponents. That's kind of fun, and it may convince our opponents to swing some things either way. But the important part here is you're giving all of our creatures double strike, making sure they hit even harder as we cheat them in. Bloodthirster presents an interesting option. So it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you untap it. There's an additional combat, and it can't attack a player it's already attacked this turn. So Bloodthirster gives us, well, up to 2 extra combats per turn, depending on how many flying blockers our opponents have and things like that. The only downside of Bloodthirster is it doesn't untap Kaalia. So it's not like Kaalia is going to get untapped, right? It just untaps itself. But if we had any way to give Kaalia vigilance, which we do, right? There are ways in our colors to do that. That means that Kaalia could attack 2 more times. We could build into that if we want to. I think the way I view it is Bloodthirst is just going to lead to 18 damage a turn at maximum, right? 6 to each player. And we can take advantage of that, right, with our other combat-y type effects. Burning Room Demon, when it comes in, lets us search a library for exactly 2 cards not named Burning Room Demon and have different names. An opponent chooses one of them. We put one into our hand and one into our yard. Truthfully, we just pick 2 creatures we really want. Our opponent's going to dump one into the yard. One goes into our hand to get cheated in, right? And the other one, we have lots of ways in our colors to reanimate and do things like that to get our creatures back. So we're going to find a way, right, to do it that way, to get that creature back. Gisela is going to double all the damage we would deal to, anyone would deal to an opponent or a permanent opponent controls and have all the damage dealt to us. It's just going to help us, again, hit harder as we get there, make sure we can get our damage in. Herald of Eternal Dawn is one of 2 copies of Angels that have a pretty interesting ability. We can't lose the game when our opponents can't win the game. Now, neither of those Angels have Indestructible, but the really interesting thing about Herald is it does have Flash, meaning you could flash it in instant speed if you wanted to, but they both just present obstacles for our opponents to have to get around. Lisa says whenever a non-token creature we control would die, we return it to our hand at the beginning of the next end step. I really like this ability because it's going to put those creatures back into our hand to cheat in again. This would also put Kaalia back in our hand. If we wanted to keep it in the graveyard and wait till our end step to bring it back to our hand, if we wanted to chance that, it's an option to keep open for you. Lord of the Void, 7 mana, 7/7. When it deals combat to a player, we exile the top 7 cards of that player's library and put a creature from among them on the battlefield under control. Just a really fun ability. When you cheat it in against the right person, maybe get a big creature for us, right? A good creature, and just stack that ability for multiple turns. Lyra Dawnbringer has lifelink, and it gives all of our other angels lifelink. Again, we are playing enough angels for that to be relevant. Gain us a life back. I think Master of Cruelty is probably one of the most obvious answers to Kaalia. It can only attack alone, which is the thing we're going to get around because it's not going to declare an attack when we cheat it in with Kaalia. And it says whenever it attacks a player and isn't blocked, that player's life total becomes 1, and it assigns no combat change to this combat. I'm realizing that's an attack trigger, isn't it? Well, hey, the next turn, right, Master of Cruelties then becomes a big deal, but I think it's still an interesting thing to cheat in, and I'm now realizing that this doesn't work the way I want it to, which is the point of a series like this. It's the point of building decks, right, to figure out if these cards work the way we want them to. But a dragon, I think, works really well for us is in Nareeve. It says if a creature we control that entered this turn would deal damage, it deals twice that much damage instead, making sure everything we cheat in is going to hit even harder for our opponents. There's Platinum Angel, the other half of that duality of cards. You can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. Just providing your opponents an option of something to have to get around. Razaketh presents a pretty fun ability. Big 8/8 Flampler, flying and trample, and then you could pay 2 life and sack another creature just to get a card and put it into your hand. Note that getting at card can be anything. So there's a lot of ways you could look at this. You could go something to reanimate something out of your graveyard. We have cards in our colors that could reanimate your entire graveyard. Razaketh provides us with a lot of options. I think what's almost likely going to happen is you're going to get rid of a cheaper one of our 3 creature types and go search for a better one to cheat in with Kaalia. And I think it's well worth it, especially if you can make some tokens as fodder for Razaketh. Runescar Demon just gets you any card you want, puts it into your hand whenever it enters. Again, a great way to go either fund your next right cheat in or just get something ready to go. Scourge of the Throne, again, its ability doesn't happen when you cheat in with Kaalia, but the next time it attacks, if it attacks the player with the most life or tie for the most life, you get an extra combat, and you attack all attacking creatures, meaning you will untap Kaalia. So you'll get a second Kaalia trigger there. Sephara is going to protect all of our flying creatures, giving them indestructible. It's a really nice ability. No, we can't play Avacyn in our budget, so this is kind of our budget Avacyn. Obviously, we'll see Avacyn in the no-budget version. Sarah's Emissary, when it comes in, you choose a type, and you and your creatures have protection from the chosen card type. You could have fun and choose creature if you want to, just meaning your creatures couldn't be blocked. There's a lot of ways you could look at Sarah's Emissary. If you're worried about single target removal, you could pick something like instant. There's a lot of ways you could look at what you'd want your protection from. I think the creatures makes the most sense because then you just can't be blocked, and you can also block for free because your creatures couldn't be damaged by creatures. This also means that you can't be attacked and damaged by a creature. So just a very interesting ability. If you have any questions on protection, it's a very odd mechanic. I would recommend you look up how it's worded. It's just one of those mechanics. It's good to know exactly what's covered and what isn't. Sorrow of Discord is a 6-mana 6/6 where you choose 2 players when it comes in, and whenever you deal damage to one of them, you deal damage to the other. This is a great ability because then you can just focus one player down and you're taking another player down with it. Of course, we gotta play the big Valgavoth, a 9-mana 9/9 word to sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. Whenever a card we don't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you exile it instead. We can just play cards that are exiled. Valgavoth is a monstrosity. It's 9 mana, so for sure, right? We want to cheat it in with Kaalia. It's only going to take 1 or 2 turns for you to realize that Valgavoth's just going to start amassing cards for you to play, and you might find some fun out of your opponent's decks in the process. And then Vilis will let you pay a black and pay 2 life to give a creature -1/-1 until a turn, and whenever we lose life, we draw that many cards. So effectively, pay a black, draw 2, right, to give a -1/-1 to a creature. You don't really care. I think Vilis really just helps us refill our hand, find more demons, dragons, and angels to cheat in, right, and just get more value that way. As far as protecting Kaalia goes, there's a lot of ways you could approach it. I think things like the Boots and the Greaves are a good idea. Boots giving them Hexproof and Haste, Greaves giving Haste and Shroud, Lavispur Boots giving Ward 1 and Haste, just some ways to make Kaalia a little bit harder to target so we can keep her around. We also have other ways, things like Kaya's Ghost Form. If she would leave the battlefield, she comes back. And then you have something like Reconnaissance. Let's say Kaalia attacks, but it gets blocked. You could just pull her out of combat and keep her alive. I think there's just a lot of ways you can approach protecting Kaalia, and those were just the ideas I wanted to show off of some ways you could do it. But I think as a deck, we want to find more ways to take advantage of what we're trying to do, which is having monstrous creatures in our hands and trying to find a way to bring them in. You have things like Ishin and the new Windcrag Siege we'll talk about in a slide or two that double up your attack triggers, just meaning Kaalia would go off multiple times. The only downside of this, and I really don't honestly think there's a downside, but the only downside of this is, remember that Kaalia has to put in the creature tapped at attacking the player you're attacking. So you can't like double up here and put 2 creatures attacking 2 other opponents. You have to put the creature attacking the same opponent, unless you perceive that not to be a downside, then that's great. But in some scenarios, it could be a downside, right, depending on what you want out of the creatures in your hand. Phyrexian can just draw you an extra card each turn, again, just allowing you to potentially have more of these creatures in your hand cheat in. Sneak Attack, any deck where you're looking to not pay the cost of a creature and it is in red, I think is a great Sneak Attack deck. You basically get those creatures temporarily, and we are in black, so we've got plenty of ways to reanimate creatures back out of our graveyard as well. Unholy Annex is a really fun spell, really fun room. On its Annex side, at the beginning or end step, we just draw a card. If we control a demon, each opponent loses 2 life and we gain 2 life, otherwise we lose 2 life. So if we see our demons quickly, we're going to start dealing damage. Otherwise, we can just pay 5 mana to get a demon token. But Annex is just going to be more card draw, and half of the, probably over half your games, you're going to see a demon, especially with the ways we can find in our deck to find other cards, right? And we do have a good amount of demons in the deck. Then Unholy Annex is just going to start drawing us card and nuking people some life over the course of a game. And then there's that Windcrag Siege, the Mardu side, giving us that second copy of that Ishin ability to just give us another attack trigger whenever we attack. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is our shot at Kaalia. And going into testing, I think the question of any Kaalia deck I've ever seen is, are your creatures doing enough when you're cheating them in? Because Kaalia is reliant on us putting the right creatures down at the right time. And this is unfortunately where I think budget matters, because there's a cross-section of just some great creatures like Avacyn and Twin Flame Tyrant that just do great things when they come in. Of course, then you have the top-end dragons of like Ancient Copper Dragon and Ancient Brass Dragon and Ancient Gold Dragon. These big dragons just have monstrous effects when they come in. But all those come with real world price tags. We'll talk about that in no-budget version and kind of the difference. But I wanted to kind of put it on your radar that this matters when you're building your deck. And my suggestion would be, find every slot in your creatures that you want to cheat in and make sure that that thing is doing something the turn it comes in. I think a 7/7 beater is perfectly fine, but truly, if we're going to put a creature in there, make sure it's doing something when it comes in. Is it affecting the board state? Is it dealing damage? Try to find creatures that when you cheat them in, you're going to get extra value from, because I think it's going to feel awkward if you just waste a turn putting in a 5/5 dragon that does nothing, right? Commander as a format's way too far past just being able to put in a big cruiser and it be, a big beat stick and it being enough. So be mindful of the creatures you're putting in your deck. That's what I tried to do here. And I think it's something we can confirm as we get into testing. So let's do what we love to do on the channel most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's just run through some game scenarios, understand how we set up our board, and how we get into some of our normal lines. Here we're keeping a 3-lander with a talisman, so there's our 4th mana for Kaalia. Faithful Suiting for some draw. Windcrag Siege has already got one option to double up Kaalia. And I think that's important because we want to make sure that we're actively getting Kaalia in. I was going to say the only downside is we didn't have anything to cheat in with Kaalia, and there we go. We have an Angelic Skirmisher. I wasn't super worried about it because we had the Faithless Looting. So, I mean, even if we didn't draw the Skirmisher here, we go land Windcrag Siege and Faithless Looting next turn, right? So we weren't as worried about that. But as we come to our next turn, we draw Platinum Angel. So Windcrag Siege makes a ton of sense here, right? Now we get 2 triggers. We've got 2 in our hand. We could run through the looting if we want to. The only thing that worries about me that is I have some nice pieces of removal I'd like to keep. So we would just go to combat, right, and just put both of these down. Skirmisher's ability says beginning of each combat, so everyone's combat. We choose First Strike, Lifelink, or Vigilance, and all of our creatures get that. So this would be potentially really nice to pair with that Bloodthirster, right? Giving all of our creatures Vigilance, meaning they can attack over and over, right, with Bloodthirster. But here we're just dealing 10 damage to somebody in the air. Nice. And now these are going to continue to be beaters for us. And this is where I think the turn over turn value of Kaalia comes into hand. I think we got to crack the looting now. So we can get ourselves into, we'll dump the Talisman, and I think we'll dump the swords. And then put the Kaya's Ghost form on Kaalia, just protect her a little bit more. I think I just gave everybody Vigilance here and just attack. It's a little awkward. We didn't manage to draw into any more of our demons or angels or dragons, but that's okay. It's going to happen. We try to put enough in the deck for it not to happen, but take the attacks there. And as we get into our next turn, there's Swiftfoot Boots. So unfortunately, this is the thing that I've also seen happen with Kaalia decks, whereas you dump your hand out and you don't have any way to refill your hand, which is something we're trying to do in the deck. Draw spells, abilities that, draw you, or creatures that draw you cards when they hit, things like that. But I think this is a very real possibility you have to consider when you're playing through your Kaalia deck is, am I just going to run out of my hand, at the wrong time? But let's get into playtest number 2. Keeping a 2-lander with Talisman and Felwar Stone. So we ideally have all 3 of our colors, even if our opponents don't have our colors. There's Night's Whisper for a little bit of draw, and we see the Skirmisher and then Herald of Eternal Dawn this time. So we'll play the Graven Cairns, go into the Talisman, and then when we play the Fetid Heath, this is enough for Kaalia going here for red-black, going here for black-white. So we have enough for Kaalia here on turn 3. Again, turn 3, Kaalia is ideal, right? So on turn 4, we could start attacking with her. Play the Talisman. I think I'll just throw Swiftfoot Boots on and equip. Go to attack, and I think we'll just get the Skirmisher in. Get it attacking, so then on future turns we can take advantage of that. Play the Talisman. We'll do the Night's Whisper. Draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Of course, we continue to hit no creatures, but this turn we'll put down the Herald, getting in for some more damage. Jeez, and now Moxfield's just going to brutalize me. It probably could come down to just me not having enough creatures in the deck, but again, this is why playtesting is good. Don't take 2 games as a litmus test. Do 10, do 20, do 25. Really start to see your goldfishes come out. But I think if anything, this is the thing I'm the most afraid of with Kaalia, is that you run in this experience too often, and we either need more reanimate or things like that to get our creatures back. But we'll get into playtest number 3, keeping a 3-lander with the Boros Signet, animate dead for a way to get something back, path, and then Lyra, so not a bad angel there. All right, well, here turn one, we see Gisela. So, okay, we're starting to see more this time. There's the sneak attack. Gisela's great, right? Dumping up all that damage on our opponents, right? Here, I think I like getting the Lava Spur boots on, and we'll just get Gisela down, right? And double up the damage. So, 14 going to the opponent of choice this turn, right? With that. The damage to us being halved is really huge, so that way we don't have to worry about getting hurt too bad. Of course, this turn we'll go for Lyra, so we're gaining a ton of life back. 10 here, 10 here. And then, of course, Kaalia is not an angel, so she won't gain its life back. But that's absolutely huge right now. We're keeping ourselves alive on our life total. Here, but we just hold up the inevitable peak for removal. And again, attack again. Now the nice part is, I think it's easy to look at the little bit of my shortness on the first two playtests and say, oh, we ran out of creatures. What do we do? Well, if our creatures are big enough, hopefully they could still carry the game. But, there it is a possible reability. The nice part here is we have a couple pieces of removal. We have a way to get something like Gisela back if we needed to. So we're not completely out of the woods. I just think it's easy to get frustrated when you play these playtests and you don't see the cards you want. But again, that's why I always stress you've got to do more of these. I try to show 3 or 4 good ones on the channel when we do this, but like truthfully, I think it comes down to knowing that Kaalia as a commander cares about dumping in things at the right time. And if you can't keep Kaalia down or you can't refill your hand with enough things, right? Those are natural things you need to find a way to alleviate in Kaalia. And I think that's where this being my first round of Kaalia is going to come into to play as we try to make the deck better. But let's do one last playtest, keeping a 3-lander with Night's Whisper, Ishin, a nice way to double up our triggers, Rakdos, Lord of Riots, a nice demon, and then Demonic Council. I can search our library for a demon and put it to our hand, or if we have Delirium, I can search for anything. The goal here mainly is to have it get us a demon, right? Because we have lots of great demons in the deck. We have demons that can search our deck for things. We have demons who can go get us big, valuable stuff. Here, so we have 3 options right now. We have Rakdos, we have Skirmisher, and we have and Balefire Dragon. All 3 great options. We could go get a dragon or a demon of our choice, maybe something like Valgavoth if we wanted to. Otherwise, I like Balefire plus Rakdos here. The reason is because Rakdos reduces all our spells by 1 for each 1 life lost by opponents this turn. Unless somebody has a flying blocker, this means that creatures could come down for cheaper sheep. The only problem, right, is that I don't have enough mana to play the Skirmisher, so I think it's worth just playing the Night's Whisper there. This hopefully deals out some damage. Rakdos helps us hit in hard, right? And we didn't cast Rakdos, right, so it's fine on his ability. But as we come back to our turn, now we would have the mana to cast the Skirmisher. But we have Nereeve, so Nereeve's pretty fun. I think this feels like a great turn to use the Council to go get Valgavoth. And the reason is because Nereeve's going to double the damage it deals. So we go to combat, Valgavoth plus Nereeve, right? Nereeve doubles all the damage that creatures came in this turn would deal. So this is dealing 18, right? Also gaining us to 18. And this is just a problem. These guys can attack another creature player. These 3 attack the player we attacked. And now we're in great shape. We got the Blasphemous Act if we need to wipe the board. The Skirmisher would also be great on a future turn, but truthfully, I think this is kind of what you want to see: dumping the big creatures in, getting the value, and hopefully maybe Valgavoth can pick us up a few extra cards for it. I know that those playtests were a little trepidatious, but I think it just goes to show you that time in with the deck is what matters. I try my best on the show to get myself very quickly acclimated to all the decks that I brew, and sometimes it may mean, keeping the wrong hands and having to learn your lesson. But I think this is why I always push and show the goldfishing at the end, is so that we see that acclimating yourself to what your deck's trying to do is going to determine what hands you play. I think if I had to make any snap judgments based upon just the few playtests we did do, is maybe we need more card draw. We need to focus more on card draw, and that would be the thing I would suggest. But I'd love to know what you think of Kaalia down in the comment section below, and I will catch you on the next one.